Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent experiences in business.
Learn what their cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again.
Welcome, Brett Wooden, to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah. I know this is kind of nerve-wracking. This is like the Ashton Kutcher punked, right? Hopefully it doesn't.
We're not going to punk you. We promise.
I know, yeah.
We promise that won't happen. But we do like to start with something that we call connections before content. So we like to ask a question, let you share a little bit about yourself in this way. And so because of what I can see on the screen, so for those individuals who are listening, they're not going to get a chance to see this, but if they do go to our YouTube channel under Cohesion Culture, they will see this podcast being aired there in the YouTube land, and they're going to see this picture behind you, or these items behind you. And so that causes me to ask this question: what is your favorite toy?
I would 100% say Lego. So I have been playing, or I shouldn't say playing, I've been building Legos since I was, a kid. And during COVID, my parents were emptying out, of course you're like purging stuff in your house, and, since you're at home, they called me and they're like, hey, we have 8 Tupperware bins of your old Legos. And so I started kind of going through those during COVID on calls, and, you're on video so much. And I started sharing those on social media. And then all of a sudden, one that I built, someone was like, hey, that's like 10 grand. It's the first Lego castle ever, sold.
Wow.
And so then all of a sudden so my goal is, to be an influencer, like a lot of folks, where you're talking about builds, you have your city, you show old Legos. And recently we watched the David Beckham documentary on Netflix, and he's a builder. So I showed my wife, I was like, see, it's not playing, it's building.
It's absolutely building. Yeah, it's good. Ben, what about you? What's your favorite toy?
My wife.
What's her last name?
My last name is Toy, for those listening or whatever.
Ooh.
Last name is Toy. So no. Okay. Outside of being funny,
and we have no idea if it was funny or not, if it resonated. There was nobody.
Yeah, we have no idea.
We had no laugh.
We need a laugh track.
We do.
We got the button. We'll get the button going.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. In the same building vein, I loved Connects.
Oh yeah.
I don't currently do it, but I think Connects just allowed me to really explore my engineering side of things, and I built stuff that was usable and all this before they came up with the kits and the things. Like, how can I make this happen? So very much, I guess it's a plastic version of erector sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And my favorite toy was Billy Blastoff. Billy Blastoff was sold through the Sears catalog, and we had an opportunity, again, from a very poor family, and you had an opportunity to select 2 or 3 items based on certain dollar amounts. And so I selected Billy Blastoff. And it was a plastic, very small, like maybe 6 inches tall. And it was in a spacesuit, had a battery operated 2 AA batteries in the back in his backpack. His backpack was the battery pieces. And when you put him in any of the 3 vehicles that went along with him, like there was a space crawler and a spaceship and then a moon rover, his battery pack had a little gear that turned. And so when you put him down inside, he fit inside the gear. You turned on the knob for the battery and he moved. He was able to kind of move along the floor. And so Billy Blastoff, and I still have my Billy Blastoff.
Nice.
So I got when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So yes.
Is it on a shelf easily to use?
It is displayed often on a shelf, but today it is boxed because of how old it is. And so Billy has, as the plastic degrades over time, And Billy has shown his age, so to speak.
Yeah.
So showing your age, my grandfather, I had a huge GI Joe collection back in the day, and my uncle has held on to it since I moved, and apparently he has sold it at a yard sale, and he made like $50 on it. And as the guy was walking away, he said, "This is about $10,000 worth of stuff."
Right on eBay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I told my uncle he could do it. He's like, "I don't want to take the work." I'm like, "Well, you could have." I didn't. It was crazy, but
That's good. Well, that's
I
really
mean, you
great.
had me at Sears catalog. I'm just gonna say you had me at Sears catalog.
I mean, seriously, I know there's a whole story about the whole Sears and the fact that it's like not even like around. It's not even here anymore. I think all the stores, everything have now closed.
But Walmart now has a toy guide. I just saw it.
Yeah, and Amazon does too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like very thin. It's not quite the catalog, but I think they're getting there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, let's get to the whole reason for the podcast. So our podcast is really designed for those individuals who are, working in an organization. Maybe they're not 100% happy with the training and development that they've been receiving, the coaching from their leader. Maybe they are being passed over for promotion. We're not sure, but we know this demographic needs help, and we recognize and understand that we can learn in varieties of ways through varieties of mediums, and certainly learning from other people and they do is important. So we're going to get to the reason for our podcast, but first we want to ask you to tell us a little bit about who you are, because you're a software strategist, and I just kind of think that's pretty interesting. So tell us a little bit about that.
I'm going to add into that first.
Yeah.
So that is who you are for role. I want to know who you identity wise. So leave humbleness at the door. Just share behaviors, characters, things that you represent, and then also share some of the hats you wear. Right. So I want to know role and identity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love
so
it.
If this were an edible.
we have a different conversation.
I live in Oregon. I do live in Oregon, so
these uh-ohs are going forever. But if we were editing this podcast, nobody would have ever heard that. So we are truly living out our uh-oh experience, and I just had another one of those uh-oh.
Or you're just being authentic.
I am authentic uh-ohing. Okay, so the question really is about your role and your identity, and let's talk about that first.
Yeah, so I would say my identity, I would say if I was on an island by myself and had to just kind of say, what type of person am I? I'm empathetic. I seek to understand. I love to seek to understand. I think that's why I like Lego so much, is the backstories of some of the ideas that the Lego builds are created upon. I'm a girl dad. So I have two daughters. I have one going to the University of Oregon. She's a freshman. Have another one that's going to a school in Oregon. She's a freshman in high school. And I just immerse myself. They're so different, which I love. My wife is an entrepreneur. My goal is to be a good husband. And notice I say goal is to be a good husband. It's hard to be a good husband. And so she kind of made the jump. She worked in a credit union at a very high level job, and decided that she wanted to start her own business and made the jump. And so there was a lot of kind of support and help there. So that's really, is just kind of helping people live out their dreams too. I've got a lot of friends that I've helped over the years through things, and kind of building on their strengths. I'm good at that. So I'm good at looking at somebody and identifying what are they good at and partnering with them on those strengths. And so, in fact, that's kind of the uh-oh moment you're going to hear about, is one of those, partnering with individuals. But yeah, and I love to be easygoing. I go around and speak at conferences, but I am afraid to fly. So it's kind of ironic that I've got to have the middle seat. I do panic. I fainted on 2 flights. So, but I continue to get on a plane. I do not take any meds to help me with that either. I do a lot of heavy breathing.
How many other people's legs have you grabbed?
Oh man, I fainted so I try and always get the aisle seat, but on a flight to New York, I got in the middle seat. And there was two people, they were friends, and that one wanted the window, one wanted the aisle, they didn't want the middle, but they kept talking to each other. And I literally fainted. I don't remember, I was 2 hours into the flight. And I remember looking at the person to my right and I was like, what happened? And they're like, we thought you just like fell asleep. I was like, no, I think I fainted.
Wow.
So, but yeah,
And
so
you
that's
keep on
kind of
doing it.
my,
That's awesome.
yeah.
And tell us about
So,
your role.
my role at the credit union, my role at Buildable. So I'm a software strategist, and Buildable, the reason why I kind of left the credit union industry and now working at a software development company is I wanted to help credit unions through kind of this transformation of digital phase of software development. And my passion is small credit unions too. So showing them that it doesn't take, this huge budget to build custom software, help people through their ideas that they have, that they cocktail napkin at conferences together, and just help people kind of launch that. The company I work for does software development. Their verticals have traditionally been like insurance, healthcare. They work with the Archdiocese of Boston, but they've never worked in the financial and like credit union space. And so that's really why I'm working there now, is to help get them indoctrinated into that space, which, as you know, that's a very addictive space for a lot of individuals. So they're jumping in right away. So it's been great.
And I know some people will figure this out of what I've just done here, but you started out with building Legos and you work at Buildable.
I know, right? It's a fit. It's perfect. It is amazing company. I will tell you, I'm 45 years old and I'm working with a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds. So I mean, it's like it's reinvigorated my passion for ideas, innovation, design thinking, development. I mean, it's just, this is stuff that I was intrigued with in school. So it's nice to be back in an environment where people are passionate and there's never an answer that's no. It's always and, that but is gone.
Yeah, good.
Cool.
Well, and this is how I feel, by the way, working with Ben. So I completely get that with you.
Do they treat you like a dad or a cool uncle?
That, it's funny. We have our holiday, or we have a like function this coming week. So I'll be curious to see how they treat me in person. A lot of it's digital. So we do a lot of our teams. But that's, it's been really cool to interact with the folks. But sometimes there's things like when one of my peers, I had mentioned my daughter is coming home this weekend from college. And he's like, my parents are really excited. My sister's coming home too. And I'm like, oh, that hurts,
Yeah,
So.
It does.
That's awesome. So, all right. We'd love to hear now of the experience that you're willing to share to the world and our listeners, or our listeners of the world, that taught you a lot as a leader.
Yeah. So it was back, it was 2009 in the credit union space. So I was a business development manager, and the iPad had literally just launched within the world, I guess. And I got some publicity on utilizing the iPad to open accounts in the field. So we were going out, getting new membership in the field. And two of the friends, my really close friends, we talked about, there's no financial education apps for kids. And these, we kind of were started to predict, like, man, these tablets and things, kids are starting to use the games on them and that. So we met one night and we kind of did a little mini hackathon over the weekend, and we built out a kids application. And I was talking to a couple of my peers at the credit union about this, like, man, I'm really pumped about this software. It's really cool. Well, a couple of them had convinced me, hey, you should set up a meeting with the leadership team and talk about your kids application that you built. And so I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. So at that time, I had went into my boss, who was a VP on the leadership team, and said, hey, do you think I could get some time on the calendar to talk to the leadership team about this application I'm building, and maybe the credit union can use it? So of course, yes, great. So I get in the leadership room kind of a couple weeks later, do an amazing demo of the app. By that time, there was some really cool artwork in it, connected it to a savings account. It was awesome. the room was very quiet the whole time. So I was kind of like, that's really weird. Hopefully, I'm like engaging. I think I'm engaging. So I left. Next day, I got an email from the CEO that was like, hey, we really want to talk to you more about that application. Could you meet us at 4:00 today in the boardroom? So I'm like, sure. At this time I was pumped. I was like, oh my gosh, my idea, all this. So I walk into that boardroom, and as this podcast, I was like, uh-oh, there was HR and there was an attorney. So apparently, I learned the valuable lesson of when you create something and you have kind of that full-time employment position within the space, it is their property, their intellectual property. So kind of went through that process of, who did I talk to? Who did I work with? How many hours did they put in place? And the credit union ended up compensating the two individuals that helped me. So that was kind of a learning lesson a little bit, as well as like, wow, my friends kind of at that time were like, hey, money's being thrown at us. We're okay kind of, letting Brett take a bath on this, and I didn't, things went well. I stayed at the credit union, but I probably stayed at the credit union another 6 months, and then kind of made the jump to go into my own space and consulting and all that. And, but I would say definitely a very valuable lesson of, get permission, communicate. If you've got an idea, get the buy-in before you create it, or don't be working at the organization, and at that time I was very young, naive, got excited about an idea. Like I would say most of like the crashers do in the credit union space, very excited about these things, but it was a valuable lesson for me to learn at that point in time.
Yeah, good. So for our listeners, I just want to explain. So a crasher that Brett is referring to in the credit union movement are young professionals who end up getting either a special invitation or by their own invitation show up to events that might typically only be held for an executive leadership or an advanced leadership position. So that crasher movement started out with people coming to events uninvited, and then the movement got the idea that maybe we should be training some of our younger folks and getting the idea behind that. And so they formalized the program so that you didn't have to crash a party to be able to go to it. You actually could get an invitation to go. So again, I want to make sure people are listening to this, because our podcast is going to be, and is already being heard in, multiple places, multiple people, different industries, different backgrounds. So
oh yeah,
Brett, just wanted to make sure that I do that. I want to also go back to the interview that you had with the HR and attorney, and what would be your CEO at the time for that. So it was when you went in, because you came in with really high spirits, and then it just like totally sunk in the moment. Give us a little bit more. Like, I think this is a storyline. Like, people are going to want to like listen to this. Tell us more of the drama. Don't just skip over to, hey, yeah, this is what I learned, but tell me, what was it like?
It's amazing. I will tell you, back then too, it was very, so I would say the company I was at, I lived in the gray a lot. So, I mean, there was a lot of technology coming out at that time. So even going out and doing applications in the field on an iPad, it was my personal iPad, right? I had a meeting with the CIO, and they were like, he essentially was like, hey, everyone thinks this is great, but you can't use your own device. You gotta, we'll buy them now for your business development team. And even BlackBerry's, like, I kind of hacked in and got my email address on the BlackBerry, but so at that point I had kind of come in, and it was like, that, oh, beep, in my mind, I went from kind of knowing right away to this defensive kind of like and I sat down, and there was a list of questions. It was on a Word or a 8x10 piece of paper. And it was like, how did you come up with this idea? Where did you, and the challenge was one thing I did learn is like, when you get defensive, you immediately start answering the questions. Well, I came up with this idea because at work, I see a lot of the, savings accounts for kids that are being created. And so now you're learned it's learned knowledge from where you work, right? So that's the first answer that I kind of, I was like, oh man, I've just buried myself. When I look back at it, I get kind of like that weird cold sweats of like, I literally was just burying myself in the, and I mean, the good thing is they like the idea. So, but yeah, just some of the formal questions. I don't know what I would do. Next time what I would do different is I probably wouldn't have went into the meeting with the idea. I probably wouldn't have told coworkers about the idea. Or what I would have done is got buy-in first, kind of proposed a business plan, kind of things I do now, right?
Right, which is exactly where we would be taking these cohesive leaders, these individuals, these emerging leaders, individuals who either have people reporting to them or someday they want to have people reporting to them. So there is a process that you go through in a corporate environment to gain permission for things that you want to do. And although it may have been the right thing to do and there have been nothing wrong with it, people didn't hate your idea. It's just that your idea didn't get traction because it fell outside of a process that protects everyone.
Correct. Yeah.
And the idea is to protect about ideas and to really understand that. And oftentimes we just go with the gusto of the idea. And that's a little different in Ben's background. Ben can speak about from an entrepreneur as going like, yeah, or your wife as an entrepreneur can come up with these ideas and she can run with them, or you can get them going and you can get other people involved because you are the creator and the owner. So the intellectual property is already yours. And I think that's an important distinction, is who owns the intellectual property of what you create inside of a company. And I think it's important that you recognize that you did not own the intellectual property, although you may completely come up with it on your own. And you can get all mad and get all sad about it all you want, all poopy lip, but it's not going to matter because it's really not it's not really your idea at that moment.
I think though that I would love to hear how that's shifted in the last 15 years since that time period, because non-competes are not legally binding anymore. Correct. I think in the current ecosystem of everybody having a side hustle, I don't think that would ever be enforceable. So if that new technology would happen today, I don't think that they'd be able to come back and say that. So I think the business has shifted in that aspect, because when I was in corporate America, I mean, I haven't been with a major corporation for 20 years. Back then, if you had a side hustle, you didn't talk about it, because I get that. Yeah. But 10 years ago, people started talking about it, and they knew, because everybody needed a second job or whatever. So I'm very curious to see how that shifted, especially with the most recent ruling of non-competes being non-binding.
Right. Well, one of the biggest cases out there was the Bratz doll. I don't know if you're familiar with the Bratz doll. The gentleman worked at Mattel. I don't know the story fully, so I don't even know if it was the gender of the individual that created it, but I know that it was at Barbie. So there was Barbies, and then they created these Bratz dolls kind of within the environment. It was their idea, but then it was the same, like lost in all property and then was terminated from, once the idea ran, the individual got really upset, brought in attorney, and lost the case. But I think, like you said, that's changed dramatically probably since then. But I think, I would say the other lesson learned is, the individuals that I had partnered with, it was kind of a hard reality of, I had never been in a situation where friends and money, that's kind of another learning lesson that I had is, when money's involved, friendships can change a little bit, and, thoughts on things and so on and so forth. So that was kind of a big learning lesson for me too. So, like now there's so much structure I have now, not that my innovation is still there, my ideas are still there, but I have so much structure, going through like the design thinking process and going through developing a business plan, going through getting buy-in, protecting myself with the ideas. And I think it took time to learn that, so.
It does. So in that, what did that experience cost you? And it doesn't have to be in the area of monetary. So it just, however you might value cost or value, what did it cost you?
I think at that time, I think it was kind of it impacted a little bit of my relationship with my boss, because it was kind of like it was kind of hey, come to this meeting and present your idea, and there really was not no one helping me through that process. It was, and then the friends stuff, it really impacted the friends that helped me with the software.
How did how did that impact? Because they got their money, they were okay with. Was there envy on your end that they got paid and you didn't?
Yeah, I was pissed. Let's just put it that out. I was upset that that there was kind of this move forward of like, hey, we'll get our money and then we'll help them with the software. And I had kind of been removed from the whole process. So the company had worked with the software, and so that was kind of, it was a learning lesson. I mean, and that I would say, yeah, it cost me, it kind of added in this new my kind of new mentality after that was stay interested, skeptical, and unattached to the outcome. That was kind of my after that whole, that's the way I best describe it to people, is what I became.
And how did that work for you?
It works good now. I mean, because there's ideas that I've got where I go through the process, develop, or people come to me with their ideas and I'm interested and I play a little skeptical with that idea. And then if the idea doesn't go through, I'm unattached to the outcome. So I don't get emotional when it doesn't get funding, or someone else creates it before you launch it, or but I still have that same passion, I can tell you. Like, the person that was walking in excited and energized, that person's not gone. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's great. At least you didn't lose yourself.
Because you can be cynical. You could say, okay, what's the point of trying to innovate or be extra or go above and beyond? And the fact that you kept that and are still employed, right? You're still with a company.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
People would be jaded with that and be like, forget you, I do it on my own, which is kind of my story. So,
yeah.
And then with that particular experience, and although you did see a change in relationships, you kind of pulled back. You said 6 months later you left. What were your actions like toward the company? Did you blame the company for any of this, or did you, did you have like really harsh feelings, or how was that for you?
No, it was more just kind of like disappointed. And I look, it makes sense. I mean, you kind of look at the legal side of things. It's like, here's this person is kind of, I'm building software with other people. And then, I tell those people, hey, I'm going to go present the idea at the credit union I work at. And so I totally understand that process, especially, kind of fast forward later in my career. I was a, COO at a credit union. And so really understanding the risk side of things of, that piece of it. So back then, but I was young. So at the time I was a little hot-headed and angry, but I never, kind of did retaliation stuff. It was more just my lovely wife got to hear about it, pillow talk, right? I don't understand. This is, and so, but now I kind of, I look back and I did, there was a lot of stuff I accomplished there that was, really cool stuff. So in fact, that's what kind of launched me into consulting. Was there were so many credit unions at the time reaching out to me, like, how do you use an iPad, within the credit union environment? And so I just created a consulting company to help credit unions out with that. So
many of the folks who are listening may not understand all of the rules and regulations around financial institutions, because we're holders of financial data, and not only financial data, but personal data that could create, problems for identity. So having things locked down, like why you can't use your personal iPad, why you can't use your personal things to connect to the computers or the systems that you have at work, they're all designed to make sure that you don't unintentionally create a breach or create a problem for someone. So, again, regulatory reasons are necessary to protect data, and having things locked down is very important. I know that when I worked in the financial services industry, I often said like, even though it was a pain because I had to have like two devices or three devices
Yeah.
to get to what I needed to do, I was like, please never misinterpret this. I never wanted the IT people to misinterpret that I was like mad at them or anyone. It was just a frustration that I had to go somewhere else, but I never wanted to be on the list. Like, that is a list you do not want to be on.
Right. Yeah.
You're the one that caused the breach. Like the employee who worked at the Pentagon who's got their laptop taken. We know that story from many years ago.
You
That,
mean Joe Biden?
no, no. Yeah, yeah. No. Uh-oh. So, yeah. So you know, like, I don't want to be on that list. I don't want to be remembered in that way. So I really do.
Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing all of that with us. So I also liked that you were able to break down some things, and this is the nature of your mind. I think your mind works in systems and processes, which is why you're really good for software. So help us now convey to our listeners things that they would do to not do something like that. So just help us go back. Now, you started a little bit in the beginning, but now we're at the end. We've talked a whole lot. Let's just do a little refresher. What are some of the things that, or some of the steps or actions that you said that you would take to make sure that you never do that again?
Yeah, a lot of it is probably around, when you have an idea, is start to formalize the idea. There's a lot of conferences I go to. The moment you tell somebody that you work in software development, they start going, I have an idea. And they start just telling you your idea, and you're like, don't do that, especially in this space, and especially with AI and development getting, someday everybody's going to be able to develop, right? So that's, kind of that first piece is like, start formalizing it, create a business plan, get an NDA in place, don't tell everybody about your idea. And then choose your partners wisely. So the individuals that you are bringing in, formalize that as well. Talk about the idea. What do they see their role being in with that idea? And then, you've got kind of the funding aspect of it. You've got, the partners that you're going to select kind of with that funding as well. So that kind of would be my recommendation with anybody creating an idea. And it's not that hard. I mean, I think that was kind of my fear back then, was like, I want everybody to hear about my idea, because I want everybody to, like, I want the attention. I want people to say how great of an idea. So don't let your ego take over either. I think that's the other is, if you've got a good idea, it is tough to sit on it and not tell people and want the praise and the pat on the back. Like, that's really cool. That's really cool. So that's what I would recommend is, take your ego away from the formalization. So that would be kind of my first steps that I would recommend.
And then one of the other things too, just to drill down on it, is when you talked about who to share with, you were very careful about saying, I kind of heard like these would be the people that I felt that I could share my idea with, that would protect my idea or protect me in that. But what is it about those people? How do you identify who those people are that you're comfortable to share with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it is the folks you trust. I would even say, like, to the people that have the skill sets. So typically, like, my circle is folks that can actually make it happen. So you've got your designers, you've got your developers, and then you have somebody that actually like this is why I love the company I work for so much, is our owner has done it. Like, he's done a lot of the conversations of kind of on the business side of getting funding. How do you launch something? How, take it to market, all that stuff. So looking for those folks, and then that they're also kind of in your circle. So they have that trust aspect to it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like you to compare and contrast what you just said with also the mindset of sometimes sharing it, though, finds the people that you need, because ideas are one thing, execution is the next part, right? So where do you see the line of sometimes you have to talk about it without the paperwork or whatever, so that you find the right people? So how do you see that going forward in today's world, where okay, your current people, they may just say that's great, but they don't get it, right? So how would you go about sharing these ideas or getting it into an ecosystem that could deliver and execute on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have little mini elevator pitches that I do. And I focus on like pain points to see if I say something, does this hit the pain that they're trying to solve? So like an example, I kind of an idea I'm working on now. So I'll tell you the idea in the like how I would tell somebody. Um, so at organizations right now, you have a lot of new employees coming on. You've got lack of training. You've got sometimes the staff members are thrown out in front of retail or on the phone, and they're having a really hard time getting support. So if they don't know an answer, and so that pain can be addressed with something that we're working on. And so typically, like I kind of throw like that out there, and then that person will be engaged. And then when they get engaged, I'll go look at their LinkedIn profile. Then I'll kind of follow up with like, hey, would you like to have coffee or kind of a more formal type meeting to talk about this pain we're solving?
You throw the
So
nugget out there, dangle the carrot, and see what
yeah,
bites, you know?
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's
yeah, and if it doesn't bite, I mean, it's very similar to kind of even like with leadership development, right? You find the pain within the organization, and then you dangle out like, hey, we might be able to solve some of those challenges. And then if they kind of draw in closer, then that's where because right you don't do unpaid consulting. That's the right. I mean, that's kind of my joke always is like, I don't give away the farm with the ideas because you never know what people can do. So but
exactly.
yeah.
So what I really love is the fact that you really broke down innovation to solving a need. And so
Yeah.
it's a little thing I say, and since you are into technology, and that is to say that, people confuse innovation. They think it has to be clever, crafty, and sassy. But the reality is innovation only solves a need. So it doesn't matter
Yeah.
how you get there, it has to solve a need. If what you design is clever, crafty, and sassy, and it doesn't solve a need, it's called art.
Yeah. Right.
So
Well,
it puts it
yeah,
in perspective, right? What we're doing.
yeah, and I think too, like you look at like there's different forms of pain. There's pleasure pain, right? I mean, and that's why there's like people addicted to Candy Crush and Flappy Bird and all that, because that's a form of, pleasure. Like there is pain, of trying to master those levels but it's finding kind of those pain points and then solving it. And that's typically like within the space we live in, what we do. We're trying to solve pain.
I'm going to go back to a story 22 years ago. Engineer friends were at a table, and we came up with a way to revolutionize football. And it was the biggest time when hockey was using the glowing puck. And you could see where the puck was when you watched hockey on Fox, right? We said it would be easy to either mark or code with diodes or whatever a football to know exactly where it was on the field, right? You can remove all the first down questions or judgments. You know exactly how far it went, right? My friends and I created this, almost got to the prototype. And we came up with the conclusion that we weren't solving a need because the goal of the NFL was to produce revenue, not to play football, but to produce revenue. A thing like this would shorten the game and would remove the thing. Not 3 months later, Carnegie Mellon engineers came up with and had a prototype and showed the exact same thing. So we're two different colleges at the same time coming up with something completely independent. They came out to the conclusion after spending all the money figuring it out. I just heard last year that they said they were going to talk about it. Still not going to happen because it would defeat the purpose of the game. Like it's an innovation, but actually counteracts the goals of the organization.
Yeah.
And while we're on this innovation topic, we want to chat with you a little bit and kind of get your feedback on this. But part of in the launching of the Becoming a Cohesive Leader, the Power Up Guide to Grow, Develop, and Advance Your Career is our first AI generated book bot called Carl, the Cohesive Artificial Response Leader. And so individuals who either have access to the link or they purchase the book and get the link inside can actually interact with Carl, who will guide them through the book and the experiences that they may be able to want to remember or get from the book. So, so that's the need that we sort of felt that
that's awesome
out there to do that. And so we know that you are involved in that technology field. What is your response to that type of a solution that you see out there?
I think any way that you can utilize technology, AI specifically to engage others is like spot on. I also like gosh, I'm trying to think of my thoughts on this, but I really like the way it kind of brings the book to life a little bit as well. And then the other aspect of it too is kind of some of the AI stuff we do. We're finding that people, like healthcare is a great example. People will tell the truth to AI in a chat bot about, like, they'll say, hey, I have this weird, rash on my arm. Tell me what's going on, right? But it's harder for them to go to a doctor and sit face to face, right? And say, hey, what's this? So having something where they can interact with your book and then be vulnerable and not worry that there's kind of a human on the other side judging them based on some of their questions. And that's yeah. So,
and I appreciate that too, because I think what you just brought up was the difference between the emotion, right? When I'm telling a human about this rash I have, there's a potential for me to have to be guilty that I got this rash by doing something that I shouldn't have done, that somehow I'm responsible for it, not that it just sort of occurred because of some interaction with something else, but I could be accountable for that. And so we may downplay that a little bit to make ourselves not look bad. But to the bot, we know there's going to be no judgment at all. We can ask whatever question we want. The bot is not going to judge us and be able to say, stupid question there, Troy. It's not, we haven't programmed it to do that. So far, that's not happening.
I hope this is a trend I hope you're starting a trend that happens with a majority of books, because I can't tell you how many books I do finish where I'm like, explain more, or I want to kind of debate a little bit on the, like, what does this mean? Why did you say this? I just finished a book, The Anxious Generation. And there's so many. I just want a chance to interact with some of the content in that book. So I think this is this is true innovation. Yes.
And I thank you for saying that. I think the answer, the problem that we're solving is, when asked, one of the top reasons people don't read is they quote time, right? Yes. They don't have the time to read. Even with audiobooks, and you listen at 2 speed, you're still looking at 2.5, 3 hours. They may not have retention. So to be able to put all this knowledge when they have a question to get an answer versus read and not retain, right?
Yeah.
You typically have to read multiple times and study to have it come out. So now I think pairing it, and this is how we can have Carl with also the table of contents, so they can, just thinking out loud, to add to our bot, which is incredible when you ask certain questions, but to
ask Carl
the table of contents. But
Carl will give them back, and then you can
ask, but visually showing it up there too, so it'd be a great scenario so that they just know, okay, I want to know more about this, right? Let's salt the oats a little bit, right? So they know what the questions to frame or ask, because
well, as we continue to evolve,
we're evolving it. Yep.
Yes, everything will evolve as we
go through. So I do want to get this on record, because it's something my wife and I have been talking a lot about with AI. So right now, Apple, and I'm a big Apple fanboy, but Apple launched their Apple Intelligence, right? And they're doing a lot of commercials right now. Like, there's a gentleman in the boardroom that they ask his opinion on a document, and he loads the document and says, give me the key highlights, right? And then he reads the key highlights, and then he leans back and it plays, this cool Apple music, right? Then there's another one where the guy's sitting there and someone asks his response on an email, and then he right clicks and says, write this more formal. And then his boss sits back and goes, did Gary write that? Right? All of those commercials are men. So it's it's my question is this: is is it assuming that men are dumb and we have to use AI to help us write things? And so I want to challenge Apple on that. Is why are all men the ones utilizing AI in those commercials?
I may have an opinion to that,
Sure.
but it's an ungrounded opinion, meaning that I don't have the actual statistics to do it. But what I could assert and make an inference to is that they are selling to the fact that there is a dominance of men in leadership positions.
Yeah, that's
who
true.
would use those particular services. So I don't think it's necessarily about the intellectual levels of gender. I think it's more of speaking to the individuals in those particular roles to do that. But I'm very big on and I'm just very big on making sure that we have good representation, good diversity of representation in the things that we do, which is why the book it was so important to have a different variety of individuals providing testimonies to be quoted within the book. Those individuals who have read it already have seen that. Those who are still going to read the book will have an opportunity to see how we have taken a collection of individuals with different genders, different lifestyles, different ethnic backgrounds, nationality backgrounds, contributing into leadership, because it is leadership. It succeeds when there is a diversity of the way that we think. Peter Senge, back in the 90s, talked about the learning organization, and one of the 5 elements of a learning organization was diversity. But in his mind, it was diversity of thought. It was how people think and the difference of the way people think. And can you tap into how people think?
Yeah. I just thought it was fun. It was kind of a aha moment when we were watching all those commercials.
My conjecture would be, to some degree, in that observation of being male dominated, is that potentially there is a desire for efficiency and effectiveness, and not thinking that there's a need to have your personality or emotion come through.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And they just want the content. They just want the facts, ma'am. Right. And so I can see there being a desire for that, but then missing an element too. Right. So interesting.
I think the other thing too, and I know we can probably carry on this podcast for a long time, debating the significance of artificial intelligence and taking away the fact that, in days prior to that, I would have had to read the information to have pulled out my own key points. So I was invested in this and I was participating in it. Asking someone else to tell me the information may not make me as vested in it as that. So that's the difference in Carl versus the examples that you are providing. Carl isn't doing the thinking for you. Carl is providing you with the information so that you can continue to think. And I think that's a difference. Even if Carl were to boil down some key points in the document, no one is using the book to make critical decisions of spending money. But I would be hesitant in a boardroom to have someone who just got their information from an AI on what the key points were to then vote on whether we should spend key amounts of money on something. So I think that'd be crazy. But anyway, we got to wrap up, Eric, because our time. We can.
I know. Yes, this has been great.
Go forever.
What's our closing question? What are you going to ask me?
My closing question is: the R of power up is refresh
your mind, body, and spirit.
Mind, body, and spirit. So I would love to know, Brett, what do you do to help remove or avoid stress in your life?
Wow. So I love to run. So I'm a runner. The Legos is kind of the other piece of it, is, and then I'm also a gamer. So I like to PS5. We'll play that to relax.
Oh, that type of
and
gamer.
Then
got it.
And then the other thing is hang out with my family. I mean, we escape to the beach, and go on trips like cruises. So we've been on Disney cruises and Holland American cruises, and what I love about cruises is you can unplug, no devices. It's just kind of nice to just get away for a good 7 days and not worry about all that stuff. So, yeah.
I love cruises from I'm a planner by nature, and I get to unplug and not think about it and have the itinerary planned and just do nothing if I want to. So
Yeah, very true.
Is that the way you?
that wouldn't be my stress thing. The other one would be just being outside. I am so in tune to just being out in nature. I need sunlight, and I need to see green and blue skies. And that's one way. Just doing that and some breath work outside makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
Yep. How about you?
I think that for me, it is, well, there's two things. One, I like to incorporate a lot of laughter into my life. I'm very optimistic. And I have a good sense of humor, and I find things funny all the time, that sometimes maybe inappropriately funny, but I tend to do that. So I think those are ways in which I can reduce my stress, is to really focus on them and focusing on really like good times and happy times, and not worry about like the terribleness of the moment. I really try to avoid using the past to dictate what I'm going to do in the present or the future, but use it as a reference point to things that have happened already. So I kind of understand it might be historical background, but it doesn't mean because that history happened then, I'm going to repeat that history unless I choose to repeat it. So I think for myself, it's just a matter of perspective and thinking that way, thinking I'm a happy guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I am. Awesome. All right. So Brett, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast. If individuals wanted to connect with you after today, is there a special way that they could connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, they can go to LinkedIn, or they can email me at bwooden@buildableworks.com.
Okay, excellent. We appreciate that. And for those folks who want to continue to reach out to Ben and I, you can do so at info@cohesionculture.net.
Thanks for listening.
And we're going to end with our very favorite mantra that we have. And you helped us demonstrate that throughout. And it basically says this: you don't have to know everything. You just need to be teachable.